Here's a mass planting of Tulbaghia violacea society garlic, and I wanted to show this because as a designer, especially commercial designer, we tend to use large effects like this, and it's very striking when it works. I still want you to think about the maintenance on this, but if you look at a planting done this way, it's very hard to think this isn't a good way to go. Just remember, somebody's got to figure out a good way to clean up these hundreds of plants here and thousands of blossoms. Now, what you see here is they've just let these go. There's some dead blossoms in there, and they're just letting it be that way. And then at some point, they're going to come in and clean these up. Now, if you look at the foliage in here, looks pretty good. Doesn't look. These obviously get more water than the other ones I showed you, and it just kind of makes the point that these are happier when they get some water, and the soil here is fairly moist, and also these get a little shade from these overstory trees. So a couple of things, I would just say that the moisture is making these a lot better looking as a plant. You can see how nice and green the foliage is. There's no dryness to the plant. And also, they're finding a way to maintain these without hacking them to the ground. There's no sign of that kind of approach. They may do it at a different time, I'm not sure, but anyway, a much better looking way. And I think it makes the point that we need to coordinate our design efforts with the maintenance people whenever that's possible. See that these flower heads are all spent, and now a maintenance company needs to come in and clean these up, otherwise they look terrible. And what ends up happening is they'll cut these all the way to the ground because there's no good way to come in and deadhead this plant in mass other than cutting the plant to the ground. Well, this is an evergreen perennial. There's really no need to do that, but if you put yourself in their position, it doesn't make any sense to do it otherwise. So what happens is you have this recovery period of the plant needing to come back from being sheared after they've done their deadheading, and this can take weeks or a month or more before the plant really recovers. And some of them recover and some of them don't do so well. Here's one down here. There it is, and these others have done well and come back. But these in the middle, because of the irrigation not being great, have not really recovered. So because, again, this video series is about making good choices, for plant design, part of what we need to consider is what's the maintainability of the plant selection. And this for me is one of the most overused perennials out there because of this maintenance issue. You really have too many months of this plant not looking good because it's such a heavy bloomer, and then what happens is that these city maintenance companies just don't have the manpower to handle these the way they should. So they'll sit out here for a month, 2, 3 months sometimes, looking like you see here. And it's not why the plant designer selected it. It's just not what we're going for when we do a plant design. This is not what you consider attractive or beautiful. So keep that in mind when you're selecting this plant. For me, this is a plant that you use in 3 or 4 at a time so that it's maintainable without taking the plant all the way down, because this should really be selectively hand pruned when you deadhead it so that you leave the evergreen portion of the plant behind. And so just in other aspects of the design, what I'd say is that these are pretty mature. These are probably about 5 to 6 years old. They're about 12 to 14 inches across. And this designer has put these 24 inches on center, and they're still not filled in. If you want them filled in, I'd say go 12 to 16 inches on center and you'll get good infill. Also, these are not well watered. They're fairly drought resistant plant actually once they're established, but what I'll also show you is the ones down the middle that don't get good spray irrigation are all smaller than the ones on the side that are getting the sprinklers. So I'd say that if you give them more of a kind of low to medium low water, they're going to look their best. Also, they're very deer resistant. These are full of oils. This is the biggest complaint from clients that I get, is that when these are cut, they smell like onion, and it's very off-putting to certain people. A lot of folks don't mind it, but if you're going to use this, especially for a residential client, you need to ask them, do you mind the smell of onions? Because when you cut this plant, probably for a week or so, you can count on it smelling like onions around that plant. And because of that, I consciously don't use it around walkways or entry points where people are going to be, so that when it is cut, if it's offensive to anybody, it doesn't bother them. This likes full sun. That's where you're going to get the best bloom production out of it. And yeah, I think that's about it. It's really a great perennial in small doses, but just like lavenders, like lavender quasti, this thing has a bit of a conflict. It blooms so much that it produces a big mess, and so it's a high, it's a high maintenance burden compared to a lot of other plants, and you just want to be aware of that when you're using plants like this. I just think it's smart to use them in small amounts so that you don't create a huge maintenance burden for people. And that is Tulbaghia violacea society garlic.